Yo, yo, yo! Welcome back to Casting Commons, the show where we talk and discuss all things Pauper. I am your host, Teasdale, and this is my co-host, Kenrith the Returned King, Rhys.
Hello.
That was a corker, that honestly. People, please let me know if you understood that, but you probably don't. But, for reference, the last Northern Pauper Oval we did not go to. The one before that, Rhys won. And then he's the returned king, as you will find out lower down below why. So there you go. Anyways, pal, I don't want to say what we've been doing this week, because obviously it's fairly obvious what we've been up to this week, but how did the week go? Let's go with that.
Yeah, well, obviously another week where we've played some Pauper.
Woo, woo, woo.
So all the YouTube commenters can't comment that we don't play Pauper, so they'll be unhappy. But yeah, obviously we had local F&M as well as some last minute testing before we went to the Northern Pauper Open on Sunday. F&M went really well. I got absolutely demolished by Glitters and Heroic.
Yeah, you came last, didn't you, as well? You came
Yeah.
dead last.
It wasn't a good F&M for me. I'm gonna scratch that down to variance. Michael just kept ripping heroic shit against me, and it killed me very quickly.
Yeah, it's all about how you play on the day. It's all about what happens on the day.
And then yeah, obviously we both attended the Northern Pauper Open in Leeds on Sunday, which again was a fantastic event, as it always is. I was actually quite impressed this time by how much more efficient they've got it to run as well. I feel like we missed obviously the last one, and the one before that it was ran well, but the timings there was a few gaps and stuff here and there while stuff got sorted out. But this one felt like super smooth, especially with 64 people in 6 rounds. Like we were done in what felt like no time really.
You probably didn't feel that on the way home, since it was dark when we set off and it was dark when we were on our way home. But yeah, I understand what you mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's our own fault for living so far away.
Yeah, that's very true.
But yeah, really great event. Obviously, 64 players outside of a GP is huge for Pauper. And spoilers for anyone who hasn't seen the result, I ended up going 6-0 with Culdotha and winning the full thing, which was nice. Made the travelling worthwhile.
Yeah, definitely. It was definitely nice to do. Obviously, you generally do really well in these events and also with Culdotha. Like, obviously, this is the third event of the Northern Pauper Open that we've been to. All 3 times you've ran Culdotha. And done really well in all 3.
I'm just cracked with Culdotha, that's
what it is. Secret cracked.
What about yourself? What have you done?
Exactly the same as you, mate. Literally just... I did obviously a bit more testing with Gardens on Magic Online beforehand. I didn't go to F&M because I was going to IKEA, everyone's favourite place. Woo! So, yeah, so I did do some testing, obviously, and it went really well. Like, I was 4-1 in here and then. It's the big thing with Gardens, I think. Like, especially in a varied metagame, which I don't know why... Hindsight is obviously a bitch to me. So... Gardens is a deck that is really good if you verse the decks you prepare for. But if it struggles with decks that you don't prepare for. Like, everything's like a fight. So, like, if you don't prepare for it, it's like 50-50. Where if red players versus a brew, for example, or a slightly slower deck or whatever, they get steamrolled because you're on the front foot, which really rewards, obviously, these things, which is really great. And it really struggles, and I think that's the thing that I keep forgetting and I keep missing, is that Paper Pauper is definitely not Magic Online.
Yeah.
So I test with Magic Online in mind, and obviously I was like, these 3 decks or these 5 decks or whatever, and then I versed 0 of those decks. And then there was 1 pilot of Jeskai Ephemerate. So I got paired in them round 2, that sort of thing. So, yeah, but it was good. Really enjoyed the event. Really great that Dan and Jacob really obviously ran the event really well with all the judge calls. And Jacob was also on camera duty because he set me up a top-down camera to record all my games. I had my own VIP place. Felt really special. you know. But so yeah, we've got all these. So I've got these coming. So I don't see the point, obviously, talking about how my games went really. So obviously, I'll put them on the
Yeah,
channel in a few. Not that mine's that exciting. I didn't come first, so no one cares about mine. But yeah, so yeah, it was good. I really enjoyed the build up, and I really enjoyed the event. It was definitely worthwhile traveling. It's nice to see everyone, and it's definitely nice to see how big it's got as well compared to the last. Because it's been almost a
yeah.
year, right? At least 8 months since we last went.
Probably since we last went. Yeah,
Yeah.
obviously there was one in between. That was bigger than the second one that we attended, but it obviously wasn't as big as this one.
So
yeah, hopefully it continues to grow or at least maintain this 64 cap for now. Yeah, it was great. I would recommend it to anyone.
and for Bleats, who people who don't know who that is the gentleman who organises Pauper. Us as the UK, we are coming for you. We're at 64 players and we're growing. We're after you.
Yeah, it's a good sign.
But
Obviously, Pauper started from smaller than that, so
yeah, definitely.
it's something to aim towards.
Definitely. But yeah, anyways, I think we'll just dive into some news. Just a little bit of news before we dive into this really busy, hectic schedule of top eights we've got to cover. So there is no tournament news. Obviously, the tournament that we were talking about has gone. We will be covering it in the top eight. We will not be doing a deep dive at all this week for any decks, just because we've got so much to cover. There will be, in the next few weeks, there'll probably be another UK tournament-ish event in the works. Someone has messaged me. They want to find out the details. So we will look at that details and then potentially start talking about it once the details come through. So I look forward to hearing about that as well. But on to the actual news. If I had any form of editing skills, I would have like spoiler siren sounds, like doom and gloom, doomsday's coming. Bryant Cook is no longer playing Pauper. As people may have seen on Twitter, he has basically announced that obviously he's a variety stream. For those that don't know, he's the Epic Storm on YouTube. He has announced that basically he doesn't like the current state of the format. He doesn't like the state of which the PFP have decided to handle the format. And he's decided that he's no longer playing Pauper until something is changed. Sad to see, really sad to see, because he's obviously very good at the Cycle Storm, all these sort of different storm piles, stuff like that. And he's really great. Just he's entertaining, and it's the thing that I do like about the Epic Storm, the YouTube channel. It is clean. It is so well polished, and it makes it really entertaining to watch. Even though like he may not be the best player, he might not be the most entertaining. He always has the same type of deck that he's going to play, but it is very easy watching and very well polished. So it's definitely something to have on in the background while you're making your tea.
I think as well. It's just going to be less content, like less Pauper content overall, which is obviously a negative.
Definitely.
There's a lot of Pauper players that watch his content and that will probably be influenced by that decision or will be feeling similar. So yes, it's not great to see. It's always rough when people are leaving because of the state of the format. We've obviously mentioned a handful of times that we're not super happy with it, but yeah, it's a shame that that's happening.
Yeah. Like, it has happened before. Obviously, there is a few people that have left in terms of grinders. Previously, like I'd say, like 6 to 8 months ago, we've had like Raptor56, we've had Piotr Pavel who writes for Card Market. All these people have left and said they're not happy with the state of the format. But Bryant's obviously one of the first real big names out there that's actually openly said, "Look, I'm not participating in Pauper until something changes," which is sad. It's just a net negative for the format, anyways, as you say.
Yeah.
For those that do watch the Epic Storm and only don't really know many other content creators out there, if you are wanting to watch some sort of combo-y gameplay, I would recommend Kalikai's. He will fill that void if you want your combo-y goodness. Yeah. If you want unpolished, watch me. But other than that, that's it. No, that's all you got. Anyways, let's start diving into these jam-packed, chocker, hectic top 8s. Let's go for it. I'm ready for this. My mind, body, and soul is.
I guess we'll start with the challenges first. So the Saturday challenge, which is the 7th of October. First place was Blue White Glitters. Second place was Boros Wildfire, which is a bit of a one we haven't seen in quite a while. Third and fourth was Colgate and a second Blue White Glitters, and then fifth through eighth was Mono Blue Terror, Colgate, Grixis Affinity, and another Mono Blue Terror. And then the near misses was another Mono Blue Terror, and a Ponza just squeaking in 10th. Yeah, I guess opposed to the Boros Wildfire coming second, it's a fairly stock top 8, like what we're used to seeing. The main decks, obviously, the Blue White Glitters, the Colgate, and the Mono Blue Terrors all still rising to the top. And a Grixis Affinity making it up there. Just another representation of Mare Enforcer. I guess the only sort of notable thing is there's a big lack of mono red in that top 10. For me, I guess a lot of that is because the sticker version is a lot weaker to Hydroblasts, and as we've seen, everyone is playing Hydroblasts. So I can see that definitely taking a toll on its conversion rate. But yeah, not massively interesting. Obviously, Boros Wildfire there, pretty hard carried by its initiative cards and Strands and Ephemerate. But nice to see something a bit different.
Yeah, I guess the only thing I can see is obviously, as you said, the lack of red, but then also the resurgence of, like, Glitters has been appearing, but it's definitely been, like, the deck that's kind of downtrending a little bit out of all the decks, and it definitely seems like it is the weekend for it, for sure. Which is strange, because it's not like when you look at the lists, they are literally just the same list that Ocean Soul ran with, like, a month and a half ago or a month ago, whatever it was, and just won. And then it's just like, it won, it kind of petered off a little bit, and then now it's won again. It's just like, it must have such a high variance that it's just how it runs on the day.
Yeah, I think another sort of influence to that is the lack of red, or the switch to red to the sticker version. Obviously, it cuts like Galv Blasts and Lava Darts and Fire Blasts, which all just mean that the Glitters has a better time against the red decks.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's already having a good time against Terror. So if there's a lot of Terror in the field and not a lot of red, or less red that is as bad for you, it's going to have a decent day.
Yeah, which, as I say, it's definitely nice to see that there is some sort of, even though people don't like the format and we don't like, obviously, to an extent, it's still nice to see there is some rotation and variation. But yeah, I do agree with you that it is due to Goblin dying really hard to Blasts, which is, as you can tell, there's one non-red deck in that non-blue deck, sorry. Every single every single deck runs Hydroblasts in there, bar the Boros Wildfire.
Yeah.
And then
I didn't do a Hydroblast counter, maybe should have, but yeah, it's a lot again.
Yeah,
spoilers, it's a lot.
It is definitely a lot. It's also nice to see Grixis Affinity making a return as well. Obviously it was Luffy, as it always is. He's the Grixis Affinity master at this point. He's sticking with it. Everyone else has, left him alone, but he's here and showed us the true power of Grixis Affinity, which is nice to see. Crackling Shaman, strong card. Obviously, Hydroblast. It's good how it's changed as well to, like, adapt to the metagame. Like, I don't think he ran any Galv Blasts, or if he did, he ran like 1 or 2. Yeah, he ran 0 Galv Blasts because he's just hard on cast down.
Cast downs. It's one of those decks that it sort of made its name in being able to tune itself for what you're going to verse.
Yeah, definitely.
Obviously, Luffy's a master at that, but it's nice to see Grixis Affinity still just a strong deck.
Yeah, definitely. And then the other thing, I guess, last thing we mentioned, obviously, you've mentioned the Boros Affinity, Boros Wildfire. I am kind of seeing a theme as of late, especially this weekend. It really does show that I think these, like, mid-rangey piles have really figured out how. I think it's like they've figured out how Gardens does so well. Is the best way I can describe it. Is so it's like they've figured out how mid-rangey control decks kind of tackle the metagame, and I think this is why we've seen this Boros Wildfire, and also we see others in the Sunday challenge, and I'll probably touch on it a bit more there. But it's nice to see that the kind of codes being cracked, so that we might actually see more mid range piles, because
Yeah.
they know how to beat the terrors, they know how to beat the red decks, and all this sort of stuff. So it's definitely nice that you don't have to just be black mid range pile. It's quite nice.
Do you want to use that as a segue to the Sunday challenge?
Yes, that is a
Keep
great
moving on.
segue.
So yeah, Sunday the 8th of October. First, once again, was Blue White Glitters. Second place was a Pinger Burn, so red making its resurgence. Third through fourth was Corgate and another Blue White Glitters, so looking very similar. And then fifth through eighth was Mono Red One Drops, another Corgate, a Black White Ephemerate making an appearance, and then a Sticker Red. And then the two near misses was Grixis Finity in 9th and a Sticker Red in 10th. So yeah, obviously red making ground on its lack of performance in Saturday. There was a lot less terror in the top 32 of the Sunday. I think more than half as much basically from the Saturday. So sort of makes sense that the sticker decks and the red decks did better. Interesting that there is the Pinger Burn and the mono red one drops both in the top 8 with a sticker red as well. So there is still that variety. It's still not defined which red deck you should really be playing.
Yeah, it's nice to see the Pinger Burn make a kind of comeback, really, because it's kind of, I think like I said, my memory could be wrong, but from when like Medvedev kind of made the mono red one drops sort of build, like Pinger Burn seemed to just fall off the face of the earth, and it was just mono red one drops and Kuldotha, and then sticker red came out, and obviously you've kind of only just really seen sticker variations at that point. Um,
Yeah, I think even before then, to be honest, when the Kuldotha players figured out that you don't want 8 Reckless Impulse, basically Pinger Burn just died off.
yeah.
And though it was still sort of there, but it was by far the least chosen red deck.
Yeah, and I can definitely see that. Like, it's interesting that it's made a return, but I don't really know why. Because it's not really, as you say, the 8 impulse isn't really ideal. You know, I just, unless they're trying to move, like they're trying to move away from dying to blast really hard, but then Pinger Burn also dies to blast pretty hard.
Yeah, well, I think again it's linked in the same way to that sort of lack of pyroblast of hydroblast. Sorry, I think in the top 32 there are only 3 mono blue terrorists. Compared to I think 8 or 7. Yeah, 7 on the Saturday. So a lot less hydroblasts knocking about, and when you're resolving a 2-mana guy or a 2-mana draw 2, on turn 2, you need it to not get countered for 1 mana. So I guess it probably just lined up pretty well to the meta on the day. There's also quite a lot less gardens as of late, so I guess that helps with resolving and keeping ping a guy in play as well.
Yeah.
Like if you just play it and then it gets edicted, you're not going to do great.
Yeah, I guess. I'm thinking obviously the lack of terror, but it seems like you've still got the same amount of, obviously you've still got the same amount of like Basilisk Gate and like Mer Enforcer decks seem to have like picked up a bit, obviously with them in the top 8. So but obviously they run blast, but obviously clearly that's there. I think obviously they must be just used differently, very much in those sort of style of decks compared to the hard terror running full blown 8.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to see there is a variation of red as you know, as exciting as that gets. But it definitely is still, it makes it good for us in like a selfish sort of way. It gives us something to talk about, obviously, when the top 8 is varied somewhat. I guess the only thing obviously for me to touch on is obviously that they look very, very similar, but Black White Ephemerate, which has literally, like, if you look at data, it hasn't even been, like, a pilot hasn't even played this for God knows how long. And then the week after I put it on, my hot takes, it top 8s. Like, what is this all about? Please. Do people just seriously dislike me and just like, it's alright? you're not gonna get it. I'll wait a week.
I
Right?
don't think you want an answer to that question.
Yeah, I probably don't. But going back onto this is we've seen a theme of like mid range sort of like appearing more in, like, as you say, you were in leagues and there was like Pestilence from Pro Bozo playing like a mid range pile. Obviously, Corgate kind of made a resurgence, which is like a mid range control pile. We've got Black White Ephemerate right now, and obviously Boros Wildfire in the yesterday's challenge. I think they've sort of like cracked the code in how to Gardens just kind of fight this kind of like red and terror metagame, which is really nice to see. And obviously, I think it obviously just comes down to using initiative is basically the best way, followed up by a lot of good interaction, and it's pretty nice to see. I don't know, I find Black White, don't get me wrong, I don't really like playing against Black White Ephemerate because most of the time I'm then playing some form of mid-range pile mirror by the decks I like to play, but it is nice to see a different type of kind of mid-range deck doing well. And it doesn't even, it's like not even that out of the ordinary. It's like they've just cleaned up the removal.
Yeah, there's obviously nothing particularly new about it, but it does very much look set up to fight the other mid-range decks very well, as well as Terra, obviously. The two Fumes, I guess, as well, is probably a nod to like Kulduffer and Heroic and White Weenie and those sort of aggro decks.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's nice because obviously a deck like this can't really get away with Rats, which I think is one big success from Gardens. But it definitely, along with Fumes, with all the creatures that it has, obviously it's got Thrabins, Skyfishers, all that sort of stuff. Like, it can then sort of give some form of answer to these red decks quite early on. It might not kill everything, but killing some goblins while also being able to block a Swift Spear or a Dwarf or a Sticker Goblin or whatever, it gives it some game. Do you know what I mean? Like that, and that's kind of what you need. And it seems to have also went really heavy on Ephemerates, which I think they started to cut down before the deck fell off the face of the earth.
Yeah, the full 4 Ephemerates is obviously an interesting one to see. I don't think I've ever seen a version running all 4. But yeah, we were always told Thraben Inspector was the chosen one to beat Mono Red, and Core Skyfisher was the most important card in Pauper or whatever it was. So combining them both together seems like a decent plan.
Yeah, definitely.
And obviously paid off for Lord Egg, which is probably one of the better names I've seen on Magic Online in a while.
Yeah, definitely. And obviously, don't knock the success of the Boros Wildfire player from Saturday as well. Like, clearly cracked the code there with the ball to braids, removal, and initiative. You can't go wrong. It fixes a lot of matchups. And I think that once now they've figured out how to deal with Terror, I think that's their biggest problem. They can kind of tune it to at least have game against Red.
Yeah, and from what we've seen, obviously this Sunday is a bit of an outlier, but pretty much every week Terra's been the most played deck.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's swapping with Red, but for the most part, it's been Terra. So being able to beat Terra is paramount to your mid range deck actually being able to place well in a challenge.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's my mid range spiel over with. Would you like to move to the core Pauper event?
Yeah, I'll let you run with this one. It's a lot more your bag than mine. I haven't been able to give it as much time as I would have liked.
Yeah, so basically there was GN ran a core Pauper event as we mentioned last week on the 7th of October. It was live streamed. There was, I can't remember how many players there was exactly. I don't know if it tells you in the, no, it does not. But there was quite a lot of players from my understanding. It was free to enter, 1 ticks, all this sort of stuff. Callie put up some ticks to help the prize support, things like that, which then makes it even more amusing. So basically, the premise of this event before we start was basically there's no supplementary products and it's Pauper other than that. So there's no double masters, there's no modern horizons, there's no vintage masters, all that sort of stuff, which the main thing people see is obviously there's no bridges, there's no swift spear, but there's also no chainers, no cast down, all that sort of stuff as well. So a really interesting premise. But the top 8 is as follows. It was Blue-White Familiars in first place, Mono Black Burn in second, Cycle Storm in third, Mono Red Burn in 4th, Demeter Terror in 5th, Mono Black Sacrifice in 6th, a Boros Midrange in 7th, and a Mono Black Control in 8th. And the near misses were a Mono Blue Terror in 9th and a Boros Midrange in 10th. So, first and foremost, really interesting top 8. Obviously, you got a lot of decks there that you wouldn't normally see in Pauper Day nowadays, like Mono Black Control, obviously. Some decks still exist, just in slightly different form. Obviously, like Blue White Familiars, I think only loses Ephemerate, I think. Yeah, I can't see anything particularly out the ordinary after that. Then you've got obviously your Mono Black Burn, which I don't think lost really anything.
It's sort of a deck we haven't really seen for a while. It's something that's got beat up on pretty hard as of late. But yeah, it's nice to see it being able to come back in a core Pauper format, I guess.
Yeah, definitely. And also, obviously, the main obvious one that Mono Red has lost is Swift Spear. It still does have the 12 draw twos, effectively, if you can count Synth as a draw two. So there is that. And it looks very, very similar. I think it must... I don't know what else it lost, to be honest, because it's still got obviously your Lightning Bolts, Lava Darts, Chain Lightnings, Serum Blaze.
Yeah, from when I was thinking about if we could play in it, I didn't think it really lost anything other than Swift Spear.
Yeah. And obviously you've got a lot of other decks that basically don't really lose anything, like Terrors obviously from Dominaria United, Anglers from, Fate Reforged. So you don't really lose much for a lot of these decks that you kind of see. Obviously you've got Mono Black Sacrifice and Mono Black Burn can do well. Cycle Storm, again, I don't think lost anything. So it makes it a bit more interesting, a bit more fresh. That obviously it's like a new approach. I'm not surprised that Familiars did well. I'm also not surprised Cali won the whole thing, but it does make it a bit weird since though A, it's his pet deck, and B, he also put tickets up for the prize support, so he basically just won his tickets back, whatever. But yeah, it's definitely nice to see. It's a nice, like, refreshing break from obviously the current pop that we have, and there is other formats that are like this, which obviously
it's a cool one. Obviously, like you say, it gives you a bit of a fresh look at what Pauper would be like if we just didn't have all these supplemental products being jammed in. And it sort of goes back to old school Pauper, but with the new decks like Terra, obviously being added in there, but not just everything is Terra. But yeah, I like the concept. I like the idea. I played quite a bit of Heritage, which is essentially the Legacy version. Which basically Legacy without all the Modern Horizons rares that you're forced to play. And that was interesting as well. The only downside I find with these formats is there's so many Magic formats at the moment, and people are pulled in so many directions. It really gives new formats a really hard time catching on.
Yeah.
Especially when like they're not supported by WotC. Like Pioneer is the perfect example. Like no one would play Pioneer if WotC didn't push it. It would just die off. Like what was the Japanese one that was basically Pioneer?
No idea.
Frontier.
That's
Frontier, the one.
Right, okay,
Everyone played it for 2 weeks, and then no one played it ever again because WotC didn't support it.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's a tough one. It would be nice to see another one of these events fire. I would like to play in it. Obviously, this time we had a previous engagement, and we didn't want to be up at 5 a.m. after going to bed at 1 a.m. and then driving 3 hours. But yeah, it needs basically people to support it to live as a format, I think. So we'll see if that happens.
Yeah, I'm on personal belief of that. I think days have gone of where community made formats will exist generally. Like I think personally, obviously the last big one was to me obviously was EDH, which is now Commander, and I think that those sort of days have kind of gone because of the form, as you say, the formats. There's so many ways to play Magic already that are supported by Wizards of the Coast that you basically putting another one on top of that will just be too much. for sure.
Yeah, it is definitely an uphill battle. But yeah, strange things have happened. If it gets the support, I could see it happening.
Yeah.
It'll be interesting to see if the PFP have any sort of view of this or have an awareness of it and see what they think.
Yeah, I think
But I'm sure they'll never tell us that.
two things for me is one, I do know a lot of people came into this as obviously it's free to enter, you get some ticks, and it's great to try out. I know a lot of people this were going in for fun, to play decks that they kind of want to mess about with or hadn't played in a long time and all that sort of stuff. So I know that's obviously a factor in obviously the way the top 8 is at the moment. And also that I do know, I believe Jane said he wasn't planning on doing it. He just wanted a bit of fun to try and like a bit of obviously drum up, get content creators together, all that sort of stuff, which obviously worked amazingly well. I don't think they're planning on making this like a thing, but what I think that tells me is that basically I don't think, as much as it solves some of the issues for Pauper, I don't think this fixes it. I think if this was a competitive kind of event and there was like actual real stakes on the cards, I think the top 8 would look very, very different. And I think there'll be a lot like you would still have quite a bit of red because it's still strong. It's only lost Swift Spear, which I know is a big thing, but it's still got a lot of its powerful tools that it's gained in the past 8 months.
Yeah.
Terror would still exist in some form. Obviously it lost very, very little, I would say. Like Cryptic Serm's a big one, but obviously Demir Terror hasn't really lost that much. That sort of thing. So I do think like that if it was taken a bit more seriously, if you know what I mean. I'm not saying that people didn't take it seriously, but if it was very, very competitive, I think these decks that are big would still appear as well. I would think personally. But yeah, it's nice to see. It is really, really nice to see. Like it's really refreshing. Obviously, I'm all for reading out that Mono Black Sacrifice top 8 at an event. You know what I mean? Like I'm all for this. But yeah, I do think it shows that I don't think the supplemented products have an issue. Like there's no affinity there whatsoever. Obviously, like there's no glitters, there's no affinity. Obviously, they don't exist. So it fixes some problems.
I'm surprised there wasn't sort of an old school Affinity build. You've obviously like Affinity always was a deck in Pauper before the bridges and things like that.
Yeah.
Obviously Marine Force of Frogmite is still a card. You still get all the original artifact lands. I don't know what the banned list was like. Was sort of Disciple and Atog still banned?
I believe it carried on with the same ban list. I think I'm not really. I actually don't. I didn't look into it to be honest.
So that will probably affect it, I guess.
But yeah. But yeah, I just think it is interesting that obviously it does solve some problems. Just I don't think it solves all problems, which is also another reason why the PFP are here. Like it shows that just banning bridges and Swift Spear kind of wouldn't solve the complete problem. There is still a lot of other things going on in actual Pauper, not core Pauper. That is.
Yeah.
But yeah, very sweet and nice to see. Happy Jane managed to run it smoothly. Congrats for Callie winning and all that sort of stuff. Yeah, but yeah. Now back to actual Pauper world.
Yeah. I'll let you go over the first bit because I feel like I'm going to talk a bit after that.
Yeah, so I'm gonna read this out and then I'm gonna make a coffee. I'm gonna finish cleaning my house, and then that's me done for the day. So nice things. But yeah, so basically the Northern Pauper Open, we will cover the top 10 here, and basically we'll do like a mini tournament report on me because obviously I just love myself that much that I'm gonna talk all day. No, but in all seriousness, so the first place was Shock Horror Kuldotha Red. Second place was a Combo Walls player. Third place was Black Green Gardens. Fourth was another Kuldotha Red. Fifth was a Pingerburn. Sixth was a Bogles. Seventh was an Elves. And eighth was another Black Green Gardens. The two near misses were Blue White Glitters. And 10th was Pingerburn. So, firstly, I guess before we dive right into your tournament report, I would like to thank Dan for obviously organising such an amazing event and very kind for you to give me my own seat. It was a bit warm, but I'm very grateful. Very, very grateful. So I was able to record my entire event, but I am obviously not the main story of this event for sure. I have not got a main character complex, so you will catch my run on a channel. Probably in a couple of weeks because I've got a lot of editing to do. I got to Google how to edit a video as well first. So without further ado, fancy. Rhys, let's hear your tournament report.
I think firstly, just to add, Teasdale asked me to do a tournament report. I wasn't going to do it. And yeah, once again, obviously Teasdale said, but yeah, mega event. I would highly recommend attending any future ones. Really, really good. Deck choice wise, I chose to play Kuldotha. It was what I would say is a very clean build of Kuldotha. There was no real like fancy tech cards or fancy one-offs. The only real flex slots, I would say, I settled on 5 total reckless impulse effects. 3 Dwarven Forge Chanters as sort of the additional threat. And then burn wise, I had 2 Lava Darts and 1 Fire Blast, alongside all the burn 3s that you normally play. So yeah, nothing sort of spectacular list wise. It was something I felt very comfortable with. It's something I find has game against basically every deck in the format. It doesn't need a sideboard that much. Like the sideboard's very tight as well. And even some games you just don't sideboard because you're that set up game 1. So round 1, I was against Tribe, which was a surprise. I didn't expect my round 1 to be Tribe. Especially when he led Island Cycle Lorien Revealed. I thought, oh, here we go. And then he got the blue-white Snow Jewel, and I thought, oh, maybe it's not Terror. But yeah, fairly straightforward 2 games. I basically just kept pressure on while keeping up a blocker while I had a Tribe in play. One turn, amusingly, that was a post-combat Swift Spear after attacking. Just to block the Tribe if he didn't have the Shadow Rift or a Wedding Invitation. And yeah, obviously the Lava Darts are really good here. They're basically just 1 mana, your opponent discards a card, and then sack a land, your opponent discards a card, which means their potential to kill you is a lot lower. And then yes, game 2, sideboard wise, I cut, I think, a couple of Chain Lightnings for 2 Flare and Pains. Obviously, Chain Lightning's the worst piece of burn against Tribe because it's sorcery. And they've got 4 strands I believe, in the main deck normally. So yeah, obviously the Flare and Pains was a nice answer to that. But I didn't end up needing them, and won that one 2-0. I don't know if you want to comment after each round or you're happy
No.
with me
Honestly,
continuing.
I'm just laughing on mute and letting you go on. You know, it's all good. Post combat Swift is pretty nice player. You know, sometimes you got to block.
Yeah, round 2, I was against what I've called blue-black poison control. Initially, I wasn't really sure what it was. And then he played, I believe, the counter spell. There's like 1 in a blue, counter unless you pay 2 if you've got 3 poison counters.
Bring
It's
the
just a hard
ending.
counter. That one. So I was like, oh, we're doing some poison shenanigans. But yeah, it seemed like a pretty bad matchup for my opponent. Obviously the deck's pretty slow, the interaction's pretty slow, and where they win is also pretty slow. So basically 3 things you don't want to be against Kuldotha. So pretty easy game 1. Game 2, cyber wise, I cut the 2 darts because they had no guys, and a Chain Lightning, put in 3 Pyroblasts just to hit some counter spells. And then tried not to overextend into a Fumes, and won that one 2-0.
Did they play the Vraskas thing on you? I can't remember the name. Vraska.
Edict.
The edict.
Yeah, he had the edict in the 2 and a
Yeah.
black.
Yeah.
You sack a guy and get a poison. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just curious.
It was a pretty interesting deck. I imagine it would have done a lot better in a field dominated by like Corgate, for example. Like mid-range control mirrors. But yeah, it didn't seem very well set up for Mono Red at all.
Yeah, I've played it a few times on the channel. It is very, very struggles with red a lot.
Yeah. Round 3 was against Ponza. It's a matchup I always enjoy playing because I feel like it's very free
You
for
are the
Kuldotha.
only person in the world that enjoys playing against Ponza. Just
Well,
that.
only I enjoy playing it with Kuldotha. Yeah, won game 1 pretty swiftly. Excuse the pun.
Ha 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 ha.
With yeah, just a really strong hand. If you can essentially, if they just go turn 1 elf and you kill it, you're probably just going to win the game. Because they're not fast enough. And most of the time, if you've got 2 lands, their land destruction doesn't matter either. Sideboard wise, I didn't change anything. There was nothing I wanted to bring in, and the stuff in my main deck's fine. Like the lava darts are the weakest, but again on turn 1 against an Arbor Elf, they're perfectly feasible. Game 2 ended up being a lot closer than I would have liked because I drew 10 lands after keeping a 3-land opener. But I managed to play in a way where I could block a lethal attack and then have enough burn if I ripped a burn spell to kill him. And then, yeah, that basically the turn before I died, I topped a Gallblast. But it could have been any because basically all of them were still in my deck because all I drew was lands. So I won that one 2-0. Round 4 was combo walls. This was it's another matchup that I don't mind playing against with Kuldotha. You've got so much burn that if you can just kill the early mana guys, because the mana base is so fragile, you basically just get a free win. And that's essentially what happened. I killed the turn 1 03. I can't remember what it's called. Is
Cerulean
it Cerulean
Caretaker.
Caretaker? Yeah. Killed the turn 1 Caretaker, killed the follow-up Quirion Ranger, and he eventually got to 2 lands and played the Overgrown Battlement, which got Gal blasted, and then, yeah, he basically had nothing left. Sideboard-wise, I brought in 1 Smash to Dust and cut a Lava Dart. There was nothing else I wanted in the sideboard, and Lava Dart's the worst piece of burn in that matchup. But yeah, game 2 basically ended the same way. I burned out his early guys, and he just didn't have the mana base to be able to stabilize. Which
When I
go
I
on.
was just about to say, when I read the notes, I was thinking for a good like 30 seconds, I thought to myself, why is he brought in Smash to Dust? Like that's a lot of X1 hate. And then I remembered it's got the secret text to kill a wall.
Yeah,
I was
it's
like,
2 mana kill Overgrown
I
Battlements,
was like, oh yeah,
which is what it did in that game.
can't complain with that.
But yeah, it's the both walls decks, Cascade and combo walls. Like the mana base is so fragile if you can deal with the guys, that's usually the best option rather than just burning the face. Cascade is a bit less so because it has the sort of explosiveness of like Tinder walls and such. But yeah, combo walls especially, Quirion does a lot of the heavy lifting. So if you can deal with that along with their Cerule, you usually have enough time to kill them. Round 5 was against Elves. Another matchup that, if you play it carefully, is pretty free for Kuldotha. Similar to Walls and Ponza. So I had 3 nice matchups in a row.
6, but we'll whatever.
I don't know. Tribe could have got that.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah, similar to the Walls game plan. If you remove their core guys like the Priests of Titania, like the Well-Wishers if they play them, and don't let their Vanguard get too big, you usually just have enough pressure to get there before they can do the same. One game 1, sideboard wise, I brought in 2 End the Festivities and the 1 Smash to Dust for the deal 1 to all mod to yourself previously mentioned. And I cut 3 Epicures, basically because he's just not a very good attacker in that matchup to play stuff like Jesper Sentinel, for example, or the tapper that gives +X+X 10 Timber Ranger.
Timber
Is that it?
Watch Elf.
Timberwatch guy.
Yeah.
Basically a 1/2s that just shut him down. So he's not very good. The elves pilot had a pretty solid start. Turn 1 and 2 on the play, but I had an early end, which then basically tamped him down enough that I could fire off a few impulses, get a smash to dust, clear the board again, and then that was enough to seal the game. So I won that one 2-0. And then the last round, which I would say is the most interesting round, the pivotal round.
By interesting, he means this is when his tournament started.
Yeah.
I'm only joking.
I picked the right deck. What can I say?
Yeah, you did. Well,
which was against Green Black Gardens,
woo, woo, woo.
not Teesdale MTG. He
No,
didn't get to the final.
I was in the bottom. I was literally on the last table, on the lower table. If I was given tables, I'd be on the bottom right now. So.
Not a matchup that I enjoy. I've probably played it way too many times against Teesdale. I do think Kuldotha is favoured in the matchup, but playing against just the sheer amount of removal that Gardens plays is always a bit tedious. But yeah, so game 1 was basically a really good showing from Kuldotha. Really solid hand and put me 1-0 up very quickly. Sideboard wise, I knew Nick's had a interesting sideboard plan against Burn after watching them throughout the tournament. So they brought in 4 Campfire, which, if people don't know, it's a 1-mana artifact, I believe, that you can pay 1 and tap to gain 2 life. And then you can pay 2 tap and exile it, put all the commanders you own from the command zone into your graveyard, from your graveyard into your hand, and then shuffle your library.
So 2 mana, shuffle your
graveyard. Your library. Which is a thing, yeah. But yeah, it was basically 1 mana and then 1 mana tap, getting 2 life. So knowing this, I brought in 3 Smash to Smithereens. Normally I wouldn't have brought them in against Gardens because you don't really want to be smashing like Ica Wellsprings and giving them a card. I'd thought about bringing Relics in, but after testing against Teesdale, I was never that impressed by them. They obviously make the Spin and Darknesses harder to cast, and they turn off the Blood Fountains, but I didn't really think that was enough to justify bringing them in over the ping and draw that the implements would give us.
Makes sense.
So yeah, game 2 was super long, and ended up ending my winning streak. Up until that point, I hadn't lost a game in the event. I did come within 1 point of a burn kill on 1 turn, but ultimately there ended up being 4 campfires in play, getting activated every turn, and a Weather the Storm for I think about 15 or 18, which yeah, ultimately was enough after 2 Avenging Hunters got played in the same turn. Game 3, obviously being on the play was very good for me. Was a very back and forth game. I kept a pretty decent hand with some good threats in, and got a lot of damage early on. I managed to smash to smithereens the first campfire as well, which was pretty big. As it was a turn, I think I attacked with a dwarf and a swifty and smashed the campfire, so it ended up being 5 damage as well as taking the campfire out. Ultimately, the game came down to a turn where Nyx had to play Crypt Rats and Crypt Rats for 2. When I had a board of 2 Swift Spears and a Dwarf, and I was tapped out, but I'd been holding a Fire Blast in my hand for quite a while, and obviously that dealt 4 to the face and saved the 2 Swifties and the Dwarf from the Crypt Rats, which was more than enough to finish the game. And then that was my tournament.
Yeah, wasn't a can't complain at the run, but it definitely shows. Obviously you do know this deck, and you know obviously a lot of matchups you're on sideboard, and obviously which is great. You've obviously played this deck a lot, as I know,
Mm.
um, and you know the ins and outs. And I definitely think like little things like obviously Gardens is a matchup you sometimes sideboard, sometimes you don't.
Mm.
Like obviously we've messed about with like different sort of things, and obviously knowing that Campfire was coming in was really clutch. It was also quite funny to know that Nick's had 0 cards in the hand going into like the start of that Rat's turn as well, I
Yeah,
believe, and he drew like a Deadly Dispute or something, didn't he? Deadly Dispute his Wellspring to
yeah,
then
ended up a lot of cards in hand.
yeah, but then it also meant his mana was like taken up, so he could only
Mm.
crit Rats for 2 instead of 3, and then basically the Fire Blast just sealed the deal because everything survived. So yeah, it was pretty nice. What was your thoughts on Campfire? I feel like I've been told to ask you this, so I'm gonna ask you this because I will also give
um,
my opinion too.
yeah, it was an interesting sideboard choice. Um, it's a tough one because sort of having one is pretty irrelevant. Like it doesn't do nearly enough to justify the card
Mm,
and the one mana that you have to put into it every turn. Um, I think to add some more context to this, 4 campfires were brought in, but also 2 weather the storms were brought in as well.
mm,
Um, so like campfire alone just obviously isn't enough. Obviously game 2 they were really good, but only when there was like 3 of them already in play.
mm-hmm.
And even then, for a long time, I was outclocking the campfires to a point where I came within. If I'd top decked a Gal Blast instead of a Chain Lightning, it would have still been lethal.
Yeah.
So for me, I think it's interesting. I think it's cool to test them,
Mm.
but I don't think they're worth the amount of sideboard space they take up.
I think
Um,
especially since you need 4 as well. Like it's
yeah,
like whether you can run 2, whether you could run 3, if you think you're gonna verse less red, like you can easily just run 3 weathers or 2 weathers if you. But I think you can't do that with Campfire at all.
yeah. I think you need them so early as well for
Yeah.
the life to add up, because it's obviously only 2 a turn. Like a weather, you can weather late and give yourself like a turn or 2 leeway.
Mm.
Where campfire, if you just don't have it really early, like you top deck and you're like, oh, gain 2 and then die.
Mm.
Obviously, it's probably at its best in gardens because you draw so many cards with like the dispute and bargain engine. Plus, it's an artifact that you can also dispute away.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, ultimately, I think
Mm.
it's a lot of cards to dedicate to a matchup that it doesn't make that much better, in my opinion.
Mm.
Um, I think you could cut 4 campfires, add go up to 4 weathers, and then just have 2 free sideboard slots.
Yeah, for example, my sideboard for red is basically I have 4 weathers, 2 some form of mass removal. At the moment, my choice is Drowning Sorrow because Magic Online I
Mm.
have Sticker Goblin, so want to try and pick up that. But obviously, like Nyx's is like Fumes. Nyx had a Fumes in the board, I believe, as well. But
I think even in the main,
yeah, yeah,
they had
2, 2,
two fumes in the
yeah,
main alongside the 3 crit rats. So it was
yeah,
very like pointed to killing small creatures.
yeah.
Um, and then obviously the 4 campfires and the 2 weathers in the board as well.
Yeah, definitely. I think one thing that I would like to have seen is basically I think Campfire as a whole, as much as like Nick's versed, I think 3 red decks, either like not including yourself or including yourself, so either 3 or 4 red decks.
It was including me, yeah.
Yeah, so three red decks and then 1, 2 of them,
Mm.
which I would overall I'd say it's like the matchup over the 3 games is probably it's like favored red, but I'd probably say like 60-40 after the 2 cyborg because weather carries hard for me
I
in
think
general, not the particular lists.
yeah, one point as well is one of those decks was Pingerburn, which I
Yeah,
think is a lot worse against
yeah,
Gardens
oh
than
yeah,
Kuldotha.
yeah, definitely.
Because it dies so hard to one removal spell.
Mm.
Like one Chainer's Edict is really big against Pingerburn, where one Chainer's Edict eating a Voldaren Epicure or a Kuldotha or a Goblin token is pretty
Not yeah,
irrelevant.
yeah, yeah, definitely. But I do, yeah. So I do think it is obviously favored difficult order, but I think it's like 60-40, maybe 70-30, something like that. Like, it's not like, obviously, it's nowhere close to.
Oh, it's not a slam dunk.
But I do think what I do think would have been interesting, or it would have been nice to like kind of look and have as a kind of thing. I think that Knicks' list was very, very favoured for Red in mind, as you say, in the main, with the 3 rats, the 2 fumes. And I do think that Campfire's outshone that kind of list that I have, personally. Because I do think I do think Campfire piqued my interest once I realised I read the last line properly. I do think, obviously, like, being able to shuffle your graveyard back in is actually quite a relevant ability for not red, as in like Tron mirror, like versus Tron or versus Jeskai Ephemerate or all that sort of stuff. Like, it does actually give you game, which is interesting. But I also don't think the cards. I don't think that's it, and it kind of maybe. I feel like it felt like it was. That's probably where I think it. Where I'm at.
I think if the second ability could shuffle target player's graveyard into the library, it would probably just be a slam dunk include, because you can cut like the spell bombs or whatever, or the relics, whichever you're playing, and just have these 4 Campfires as sort of a cure all against red and graveyard decks. But it could catch on. I like that it's been tested, and I don't think it's the worst thing you can be doing, but I ultimately think it's probably just worse than more weathers.
Yeah, I think like that's what it's definitely not like, oh my god, let's no Gardens players touches with a guard pull for sure. Like, it is actually it's worth testing. It might surprise, and I will most likely test it in, because I also didn't even know it was on Magic Online. I thought it was but it is, so I'll definitely be testing out at some point. But I think ultimately that's my thoughts going into it, is that I think weather's probably better, and it kind of was outshone by the main deck choices, like I said, 2 fumes, 3 rats, all that sort of stuff. Like, really did probably sold the matchup.
The rats, especially from my side, did a lot of work. Like even the game 2 only went that long because of rats. Being absolute house.
Yeah, my thing was I got quite greedy, and I cut a rats for a second blood fountain, and that actually probably, like, if I've actually did verse red, because spoiler, I didn't, would have probably made me struggle a little bit, I think. But yeah, so there is your tournament report. Nicely done. Congratulations.
Yeah, it was obviously a really good event for me. Ending 6-0 and almost 12-0. It was 12-1. But yeah, really good. Yeah, better than I could have hoped for.
Yeah, a lot of good matchups as well. Like, a lot of a lot of really, but that again doesn't take away you obviously have to know these matchups. Like, you can tell by obviously your tournament report. You've obviously played against elves. You play elves yourself. You've played combo balls. You know these matchups inside and out. You know how to tackle them without overboarding, which is a big problem for a lot of players. And I do think it's one of your skills that you are very good at knowing what you want your deck to do and look like post board.
I do try.
Which 90% of the time means I don't sideboard, my deck's cracked anyways, is how it ends up being usually. But anyways, can we move on to shoutouts?
Yeah, go for it.
So I just want to make a couple of shoutouts. First and foremost, let's shout out to Rhys. Congratulations. Woo! Shout out for winning the Northern Pauper Open, giving some rep to Casting Commons. At least one of us is trying to do some hard work. I'm just here trolling.
I'm the one who doesn't play Pauper.
I know. You just play the best deck and win. What can I say? Like, you only had 1 round. You played against Gardens and the rest were free. Only joking. Also, shout out to Callie for winning the Core Pauper event, even if he did win his own tickets back. Very congratulations. But sure, nicely done. Shout out to GN as well for running the Core Pauper event. Nice to see again. But here is the most important shout out. The shout out that I was looking forward to the most. So we went to this Northern Pauper Open for a little bit of backstory. There was a little, I want to say child, young kid, young adult, whatever you want to call him. He had a Make Bogles Great Again hat, which was all trumped up, was fantastic. So I walked over to his dad, who's Jake, who was playing Elves as well. Shout out to Jake, who came 7th, was it? Was that what it was? 7th? Shout out to him. again. But yeah, I walked over and he was like, and then he was giving me some backstory. You know, this is his first big Pauper event. He's been getting into Magic, and obviously he decided to play Bogles. So that means he's Rhys's hero automatically.
Yeah, definitely.
So I would like to shout out Oliver Cartwright for his first ever Pauper event in a 64 player Pauper event, which is incredible. And after speaking to him after the fact as well, after he's played all his games, some matchups didn't go his way. Don't get me wrong, he versed some weird wild piles. You know, preaching at the converted over here because I also versed some weird wild piles, but it was absolutely, and he absolutely thoroughly enjoyed it. And he's going to definitely, him and his dad are going to pursue looking into more events. And it's always nice to see young kids, especially, getting into Pauper. Getting a Magic's also great, but getting a Pauper is just one step. It's like chef's kiss. Yeah. But yeah, shout out to Oliver.
Very good to see.
And he was so upbeat. Like, he was against Poison Storm, was it round 1 or something? And he was getting, you know, oh, I'm going to fog you, I'm going to weather you out of reach and all this sort of stuff. And he's still just upbeat, loving life. We need more Olivers in the world, that is for sure. We need more Olivers making content and playing Pauper. That is what we need.
Hard to be sad when you're smashing people with Boggles.
Yeah, it's true. Rhys is going to try and convert him onto Toadstool Admirer as well for the next time he plays Pauper.
Yeah, you definitely need to play Toadstool. It's the truth.
There you go. Heard it here first. Anyways, that is enough of my shout-outs. And because we've already shouted out Dan, we've shouted out everyone. We've just had a big shout-out episode along with a tournament report as well. So yeah, let's cover the hot takes from last week and the hot takes from this week, and we will call it because it's been a long one.
So yeah, my first hot take from last week was that Cold Author will return to the top 8 of the challenges.
No, you don't count.
I didn't count because I didn't play a challenge. There was a mono red 1-drops, which obviously plays Cold Author, but there wasn't any sort of straight Cold Author decks yet. As we've said the past few weeks, we're always 1 or 2 weeks behind. So I imagine this will continue through. Probably next week it'll just be a challenge where every deck is Cold Author.
We are definitely 1 or 2 weeks behind because Black White Ephemeral top 8 and Greek Symphony top 8 the week after. I'm still not salty about it. Yeah, so mine was Jane's core list will make more of a mainstay, and there was obviously quite a lot of core gate in the top 8 to be fair, but they were definitely more normal, let's say.
They didn't go super ham on the blasts. One of them, on the Saturday, I believe, was pretty close. It had 5 blue blasts and 5 red blasts, which is almost there. That's like 5 non-blast cards in the sideboard.
Yeah, looking at the 2, I think. Yeah, looking at the 2 that I can see here, they're definitely...
one went even more ham.
Yeah. So there's basically, it's loads of blasts and then 4 to 5 sideboard slots for the rest. So one's got 4 Dust to Dusts and that's it. It's blasts and then Dust to Dusts. The other one's got blasts, Dust to Dusts, and 1 Circle Protection Blue, from what I can see here. So yeah,
the Sunday's pretty similar as well. It's all blasts and then 4 Dust to Dusts.
Yeah. So it's kind of there, but not really at the same time. Like, you can't just go full ham on blast, but especially when blue white glitters is making a mainstay.
It's pretty close.
It's close. Close enough. I'll take it.
Just to just blast for artifacts.
I like that, you know. Yeah, that's good.
My second one was that Fae would make a top 16 return. Interestingly enough, like looking around the tables at the Northern Pauper Open, Mono Blue Fae was really popular, like way more than I expected. But in the challenges, yeah, just still not there. There was one, I think, in 32nd. But yeah, nothing else bar that.
Yeah, people in the UK clearly don't have souls. Is all the only conclusion I can come up with. There's a lot of Fae about. But, anyways, so my next one is that the PFP will comment on the heavy percentage of red and terror. Again, we're always a week behind, so there's still next week. But it didn't happen this week, obviously.
I think to be fair, with Brian Cook's sort of statement, and knowing he's sort of fairly pally with Ullman, that may have some sort of leverage, but we'll see.
Yeah, we'll see. That was my thought as well, was basically that might happen due to Bryant and his announcement. Would you like to cover hot takes for next week?
Yeah. So my first one for next week is that unfortunately we'll probably see very similar top eights for the challenges, being basically all top decks with a single deck as an outlier, whether it be elves, heroic, white weenie, that sort of thing.
Makes sense. My next one is that we'll probably see more mid-range in the top 8 next week. I think now that people have obviously realised how to tackle it with like mid-rangey control decks, like Corgate and Gardens have had some success, that I think we might see more like different types of that. You know, like we've seen Boros, Black-White, maybe even Pestilence. We can hope. We can hope. So that's what I think is going to happen.
And then my second one is a pretty straightforward one. It's something that we've pretty much missed completely this week. Is White Weenie and Heroic. I imagine something in that along that vein will bounce back, even if it's maybe the White Weenie Splash and Pyroblast. Yeah, they are sort of mainstay decks at this point. They're not to the same echelon as the other 5. But they are up there, and they probably should be represented in the top 16s.
That was a beautiful word. Echelon. Woo! For a commoner like me, that was fantastic. Finally, mine's a bit negative. I don't like to really be negative, so it kind of hurt me typing this out, but
doom and gloom.
What can I say? Since I lost the Northern Pauper Open, I'm just all who am I? What do I know? Well, I don't know anything about Pauper. Who am I? But anyways, the mine is that we'll have more variety content creators, bigger names as well, that will start announcing their departure from Pauper, similar to Brian. To be fair, we do have this to an extent. I wouldn't be surprised, like if some unofficially stop doing Pauper as much. Like I know, Mengu, for example, only goes to visit Pauper when there's like a Pauper event on. And I know that's kind of took a downtrend. He used to at least play a couple of leagues here and there on stream and things like that. And I know that's kind of took a sort of downtrend. But yeah, there might be some more, I believe, in the next week or so. Unfortunately,
Hopefully that's not true.
By the way, for reference, I do hope this does not happen because I think it's a net negative for the format. But I also think it just might happen to try and push something. I don't know. I just feel like there's something a bubbling and it's simmering away in a pot. So yeah, that's a downer to end on, unfortunately. Always a dabby downer. Anyways, would you like anything else to add?
No, that's it from me.
Sorry guys, we've bored you to death with Rhys's tournament report. Yes, he won. Who'd have thought it? He's just basically second, first, not attended, and first the last 4. So you know it was fairly obvious, but that's why we should have done with predictions. Raging. I predict Rhys is going to come first, just for reference. Anyways, guys, enough of the rambling, because this has been a long episode, and I've definitely went on too much, and Rhys has gone on even longer as well. Damn!
You told me, to be fair.
Yeah, well, you know. So, guys, just let you know, if you have enjoyed this podcast, please do not forget to share it with your friends, your family, your local Pauper community. Word of mouth is obviously gives us a massive influx of viewers, and it's always fantastic to see. So yeah, please do not forget to tell your floor judge, your TO, even the new kid starters as well about us, because they get shout outs and love our podcast anyways. So yeah, shout them all out. So guys, that is all from Casting Comments. Until next time, and please do not forget to stay hydrated.
Make Boggles great again.
Woo woo woo!